I'm sorry, babe. I just thought if I started working again, we could afford...
So the money I make isn't good enough?
Please, Bruce.
I bought you those earrings, Helen. Maybe they're not good enough either.
Mommy screams as Bruce rips an earring out of her ear. It isn't the first time. She had worn clips on for a while. But as with all other things Bruce does to her, she forgot, forgave. Now, she's crying. Bruce is angry. He usually is. Mommy wanted to work as a nurse again. But a step out the door is a step away from Bruce. One that she might not turn back from. My little brother, Ethan, cowers beside the sofa. He knows not to help, not to comfort, not when Bruce is angry. Our real dad had tried to teach Ethan to fight when he was little. There was a bully at daycare. But Dad died in a car accident before the lessons made a difference. A year or so later, Mommy invited the bully into our home. I stroke Ethan's hair, and for once, I think it does something. He looks back towards me, and I smile. My attempt at reassurance. He's shaking. I see the tears in his eyes and try to wipe a trickle from his cheek. But he flinches at my touch. I understand, Ethan. I've been there too. Our real dad had been kind. He laughed a lot. He called me Little Boudica, his wild princess. Bruce destroyed all of the pictures Mommy had of Dad, except for one she looks at when the new bruises are fresh. She screams as Bruce drags her across the floor to the kitchen by her long pretty hair.
You want to work, Helen? Work on dinner.
He ends the conversation with a kick to her ribs and goes to the fridge for a beer. I go to her, wrap my arms around her. She flinches like Ethan, looking up into empty space. She felt my touch. I died 3 years ago, but she felt me. I look over my shoulder at Bruce. He's huffing and clinking bottles. 3 years ago, he had darkened my bedroom doorway after Mommy went to sleep. I said I'd tell. He got angry. Ethan found me the next morning, my head resting on the pillow that Bruce had held over my face. Mommy had cried, but that made Bruce angry too. The picture of us, Dad, Mommy, Ethan, and me, is the only one she managed to hide. The only tangible part of our happy family Bruce couldn't erase. He gets a beer and twists the cap, but I make for the cutting board. I wrap my fingers around the handle and feel the firmness of the wood. I turn, I thrust, I twist. Bruce flinches. Dad never taught me how to fight a bully on the playground, but Mommy taught me how to use a knife in the kitchen. Now, she can teach Ethan to smile again. I came home from work on a Friday night, ready to start my normal NBA season ritual. Drink 12 beers, watch the game, and crawl in bed a fat, happy drunk. All that came to a grinding halt when I came home to find our power had gone out. All of our neighbors still had power, so my roommate obviously hadn't paid our power bill. I called my roommate, who had left that morning to go on a vacation with his family, and told him he needed to get this fixed ASAP. I wasn't planning on spending my weekend in a dark apartment with no NBA. Might as well go camping at that point. And I hate camping. An hour after I called him, my roommate called me back saying the bill had been paid and we would get our power back in probably a few hours. At that point, I decided I would go to a friend's place, watch the game, and by the time I got back home around midnight, the power would be back on. Fast forward, and I'm leaving my friend's house. My phone had died an hour or so ago, so my friend called a taxi for me. I got dropped off, and the taxi drove away. I looked up at the apartment building and saw all of the apartments were lit up with electric light. Some burned with a bright yellow, some with moody blue from the TVs. My apartment was the lone black window. There was still a chance I had power. I just didn't leave any lights on when I left for work that morning. I opened the apartment door and looked into the pitch blackness of the apartment before me. The closest light switch was about 10 feet from the front door, so I would need to feel along the walls for it in the blackness. The door thudded shut behind me as I felt my way along the walls, leaving me in near total darkness. It was much darker than I expected in the apartment. It didn't help. We usually keep the blinds closed to thwart nosy neighbors. I must have missed the light switch, because the first thing I felt in my hands was a door frame. It was my bedroom door. I wandered in, still hugging the wall, and my bedroom door whined a loud creak as I leaned up against it. I hated that door. The slightest touch would cause the door to seemingly scream. I usually had to keep it latched, otherwise it would creak every time the air conditioner turned on or off, and it scared the crap out of me every time. Eventually, I found the light switch. Flick. Nothing. Crap. No power. I kept the switch turned on, so if the power returned soon, I would know immediately. I remembered thinking, camping. This is pretty much camping. I hate camping. I would crawl in bed and hopefully we would have power in the morning. I wanted to brush my teeth first, so I felt along the walls and found my way into my ensuite bathroom. The bathroom seemed even darker and more oppressive than the rest of the apartment. Around the corner, from any windows, and having no windows itself, the bathroom was essentially a black hole. No light could escape it. My hands grasped around my cluttered bathroom counter, finding toothpaste, and, after some time, my toothbrush. I stood in complete darkness, brushing my teeth, wishing for light, and listening to the sounds that accompanied living in a crowded apartment complex. I heard footfalls in the apartment above me. I could hear the neighbor couple next door arguing. Then I heard the unmistakable creaking of my bedroom door. The first thought I had was that the power was back on. The air conditioner must have turned on, and the air pressure moved the door and made it whine. Then I realized the light in my bedroom hadn't turned on. Someone was in the apartment. I suddenly felt exposed in the blackness of the bathroom, like I was being watched. I thought about the stories I heard of pirates, wearing eye patches to adjust their eyes to see in the dark to have an advantage in night combat. I hadn't heard the front door open. So, if something was in here, it had been here longer than I had, and probably would have adjusted to the lack of light by now. I swallowed my toothpaste, too afraid to make noises, and I sat crouched in the pitch black of the bathroom, ears straining to pick up any sound coming from my bedroom. I remembered I had a power bank sitting in my nightstand. If I could find that, I could charge my phone, and then I would have a flashlight. After 5 or so minutes of working up my courage, I slowly crept out of the bathroom. It seemed to have gotten even darker in the apartment in the last 10 minutes. And I walked slowly and silently with my hands outstretched, probing the darkness. My hands were at chest height, groping in the direction of my bed. I found my lamp and worked down to the nightstand on which it sat. I opened the top drawer and started feeling for the brick-like power bank. Every sound I made, every accidental click of my fingernails hitting the wood of the nightstand, felt like I was making myself known to a predator. I felt like I was being hunted. I felt like a sitting duck. I found a power bank and the necessary cords and stood up. I didn't want to wait in my bedroom while it charged. I felt too exposed. So I planned to bring the brick and my phone into the bathroom again and wait. I stuffed the electronics in my pockets and started the process again of groping around in the blackness of the bathroom door frame. When my hand brushed up against something unfamiliar. That I got lost in my own bedroom. I reached out with both hands. My left hand felt the right side of the bathroom door frame. I reached my right hand out to the wall to confirm, and I felt it come down on that unfamiliar thing. My fingers tangled in a mass of fine stringy material. I grabbed it and realized I was grabbing a full head of hair. Someone was standing in front of me. I didn't even think about screaming. I bodied my way past the intruder and into the bathroom. I slammed the door shut behind me, locked it, and stood in the blackness. What the heck? The head I felt was at the height of the light switches. Either a small person standing or a big person crouching. Either way, it had probably sat there watching me in silence as I was fumbling around in the nightstand. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and I felt like I was going to vomit. I sat in silence, pressed up against the door, listening to the other side. I could hear the neighbors still, but I couldn't hear anything in my bedroom. Then, there was a knock at the door. It was a polite knock, as if checking to see if the bathroom was occupied. Then, it started to get louder. Heavier, more rapid. I thought whoever was on the other side would soon just punch straight through the cheap door. Then, silence. I hated how long it took iPhones to recharge. I need light, now. I remembered I kept a candle and matches on top of my toilet. So, I felt my way over to the other side of the bathroom and found them. I brought them back over to where I could sit, keeping my back pressed against the door. I sat for a while, listening and thinking. I kept thinking about the pirates, and I didn't want to lose the progress my eyes had made adjusting to the blackness. Then I heard from the other side of the bathroom. Water dripping. Drip, drip, drip. How had that just started dripping? It sounded like it was coming from a bathtub. I was completely overcome with dread. Was something in here with me? How long had they been in here with me? Were they here when I was brushing my teeth? I felt like I was going to be sick. I had to use the candle. I lit the match and caught a wick of the candle. Drip, drip, drip. A dim yellow flame cast light in a few feet in all directions. But my bathroom was long. I still couldn't make out the far end near the toilet and bathtub. I slid the candle along the floor to the middle of the bathroom. In the dim golden light, I could see 2 dirty feet sticking out from behind the shower curtain. I raised my eyes up and saw a face, also poking out from behind the shower curtain. It was dark, and I couldn't make out many features except the dark eyes reflecting the light of the candle, and its huge smile. I don't think he was human. I was flooded with a primal fear. Me and the thing stared at each other. I felt like a chipmunk staring down a lion, each daring one another to make the first move. I slowly stood up, never taking my sight off of that disgusting face that watched me from my shower. I heard a voice from the other side of the door whisper, "What you gonna do?" Drip, drip, drip. I noticed for the first time. It wasn't the bathtub dripping, but saliva from the mouth of the horrid creature in front of me.
What you gonna do?
The voice behind the door asked a little louder. I saw a hand appear from behind the shower curtain, its fingers each 5 inches long, seemingly sharp at the ends and black with decay. It started to slowly pull back the shower curtain.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
The voice outside the door was screaming now. The monster behind my shower curtain slowly moved one long decaying leg towards me. I felt a vibration in my pocket, letting me know my phone was charged. Without breaking eye contact with this monster, I reached in my pocket, turned the flashlight on, and pointed it at the thing. It opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of sharpened teeth, and screamed with what sounded like dozens of men's, women's, and children's voices. I broke for it. I ran out of the bathroom, my phone's light illuminating the room enough to see that there wasn't just the person whose hair I had touched, but several people, and they were all smiling. I ran out of the bedroom, feeling hands reaching out to me from the darkness and pulling at my shirt. I reached the door and flung myself out into the hallway, ran down the stairs and into the parking lot. I'm sitting in my car now. About 10 minutes ago, I saw my bedroom light turned on. Our power was back. I think I'm still going to wait until morning before I go back in there. New channels added was the message that appeared on my TV when I turned it on. I was curious as to what channels could have been added, and I was a bit excited, as I was getting sick of the same news, sports, and movie channels that I constantly flick through. I brought up the TV guide and scrolled through, looking at what new channels I now had access to. There were a couple of standard ones, showing reruns of old sitcoms, a channel that was exclusively for sheepdog trials, and one that only showed infomercials. I was pretty disappointed in the new selection, and in only 10 minutes, I had flicked past all of them and gotten bored. I decided to scroll through all of the channels once more in case something more exciting was now playing. I went through a station playing an old episode of Friends. I quickly skipped over the sheepdog trials, and I landed on the infomercial channel. I don't know what it was that compelled me to keep watching the station. Maybe it was the man wearing the bright purple suit. Maybe it was the nice golden watch they were selling. Or maybe it was the way the man in the bright purple suit was smiling at me. Whatever the reason though, I ended up engrossed in this channel and continued to watch.
This 24-karat gold watch is just the thing you need to show off to your friends,
the man in the purple suit was saying.
And for today's special, you can get it for just 3 easy payment of $19.99.
No way that can be real, I thought. A real golden watch for only $60. I continued to watch the advert, and the man kept on going with his sales pitch.
Certified real gold, and for the low price of 3 payments of $19.99,
he said while smiling.
And it can be all yours today.
He continued to speak, all while smiling straight at the camera. Straight at me. I don't know what compelled me to pick up the phone and dial the number that was on the screen. The way the man smiled at me, and the way he told me that I needed this watch, made me feel secure. It made me feel like I should ring and order one. As soon as I entered the number into my phone and hit dial, a voice on the other end suddenly answered.
Hello? I suppose you are ringing about the watches.
A woman's voice said. Yes. I was wondering if they are actually real gold, and if they are actually only 3 payments of $19.99, I asked.
Well, of course they are.
She replied. in a way that wasn't condescending but wasn't really polite either.
We are not here to scam you. We are here to help you out with a good deal.
I thought about it for a moment and then decided that I would purchase one. If they turn out to be real, then I was spending $60 on something that could worth a small fortune. So why the hell not? I placed my order by giving my name, my bank details, and my address so that it could be shipped out to me. The lady on the phone told me to expect my order in the next 3 to 5 business days. I hung up the phone and turned off the TV, happy with my purchase. I then decided to head outside and play with my dog for a while. As we played fetch, all I could think about was the watch and whether or not it would be real. I patiently waited over the next few days, and on the 4th day after placing my order, I heard a van out the front. It stopped just outside of my house. I heard it idle for around 20 seconds, and then I heard it take off again. It went out the front of my house and collected the box that I found sitting at the front of my yard. I took it inside and opened it. Inside, I found a shiny golden watch that was sitting inside of a small box. I picked it up, and a closer look at it, I was amazed at the way the sun bounced off of what appeared to be pure gold. I knew that there was only one way to find out its true value, and that was to take it to a jeweler to have it evaluated. Later that day, I found myself at the jewelry store, watching an older man looking at my watch through a magnifying glass. He had been studying it for over 10 minutes now. Eventually, he placed the magnifying glass down and looked up at me.
It's a very impressive watch you have here, sir,
he said.
Very impressive indeed.
He delicately handed me back the watch and began saying a sentence that would change my life.
I would say in its current condition, this watch is worth about $55,000.
I couldn't believe it. How could somewhere sell a watch worth that much for so cheap? I stood in shock for a little while, before thanking the jeweler and leaving the store. Once I got home, I placed the watch on my kitchen table and just stared at it in disbelief. I had a small fortune sitting in front of me, and I had barely paid anything for it. Something inside of me then told me to find the station again, and to see what other items they may be selling. I went over to the television and turned it on, went to the TV guide and found the station once more. Once again, the man in the purple suit was staring right into the camera. This time, however, he was holding 2 small birds, one in each hand.
These racing pigeons may look ordinary, but they are really something else,
he was saying excitedly.
Worth at over $200,000 each. These birds are a great investment, and for today only, we have the great deal of buy one, get one 50% off.
As he was talking, a phone number appeared on the screen. I saw that this number was different from last time, but I thought this could be because it was for a different product. The one thing the man didn't mention was the price, but after getting the watches for so cheap, I thought that these birds probably wouldn't cost too much. I had never thought about owning birds. I got enough love from my dog, and so had never considered buying another pet. However, the man said they were worth over $200,000 each, so I knew I had to have them. I typed the number on the screen into my phone and hit dial. Once again, a woman answered the phone straight away, but I could tell by the voice that it was a different woman than last time.
You must have enjoyed your watch if you are already ordering again,
she said, and gave a slight chuckle afterwards. I was a bit taken aback by this, but realized they probably have my number saved, and that's how she knew. I was very satisfied with my watch, thank you. I replied. Now I am interested in those racing pigeons you have for sale.
Oh yes, the buy one get one 50% sale? She asked.
Yeah, that's the one. I was wondering how much they were, I asked her.
Don't worry about the price, hun. They are worth a lot more than we would charge you for them,
she answered.
but a small payment will be taken from you. I have put your order through, so expect them to arrive in 2 to 3 days.
Suddenly, she hung up. Before I even had a chance to respond, she was gone. I didn't know what she meant by small payment. I had many questions, and so I dialed the number again. But this time, the call didn't go through. There was just silence. I tried not to think about it too much over the next couple of days. I'm sure everything will be okay, I thought. I constantly checked my bank account to see if any money had been taken out, but nothing had been. 3 days later though, I was awoken early in the morning by the sound of a van parking out the front of my house, idling for a bit, then driving away. I knew exactly what it was. My delivery had arrived. I got out of my bed and went outside, and see a small box sitting on my front lawn. Small air holes were cut into the box, and I could hear the sound of something flapping inside, sounding like it was trying to get out. I picked up the box and took it inside and decided to open it. The sight that greeted me inside of the box will be something that will always haunt me. The first thing that hit me when I opened the box was the smell. The strong, overpowering stench smelled like rotting meat. Suddenly, a bird flew upwards out of the box, hitting me in the face with its wing on the way out. This dazed me for a couple of seconds, and then I looked up at the bird that was now flying around my kitchen. It was definitely a pigeon, and hopefully an expensive one. I then looked back down into the box to see where the other pigeon was, and then I saw it. Covered in blood, at the bottom of the box was the top half of a pigeon. Its head and half of its body were lying in the box. Its bottom half was nowhere to be seen. Blood covered the entire bottom of the box, and the pigeon's dead eyes were looking up at me. I let out a small scream and pushed the box away from me. I couldn't believe what I had seen. I was disturbed. Who could do something like this? I thought. What kind of television station would send something like this out? I now understood what they meant by 50% off though. I didn't know what to do with the package, and I couldn't bring myself to look in it again, so it stayed sitting on my kitchen table. I sat in my lounge room, trying to get away from the package. I once again checked my bank account, and still, no payment had been made. This made me curious as to what the payment would be, and also made me extremely worried about what the payment would be. That's when I heard it again. The van. It pulled up outside of my house. I got up out of my chair and went to open the front door to head outside to see the van. That's when I hesitated. I didn't know who was inside of the van or what they wanted with me. I stood there for maybe a minute, still listening to the van idle out the front of my house. I managed to finally work up the courage to open the door. I stepped outside just as the van was speeding off. It was a dark black van, and all of the windows had been blacked out too. It sped away quickly, and I barely made it out of the front door before the van had vanished. I was worried now, wondering what they wanted with me and what they were just doing. I went back inside and sat back down, making sure to avoid looking at the box on the kitchen table.
I sat for maybe 20 minutes before I decided to go outside to see my dog, because I knew he would be able to provide some comfort. I went outside and called out to the dog, and usually when I do that, he comes straight over. But today, he didn't. In fact, I couldn't see him anywhere in the back garden. I looked all over for him, calling out his name, but I never got any response. I had a terrible feeling in my stomach. My missing dog and the van, I knew they were connected somehow. For whatever reason, I decided to turn on the TV, and as soon as I did, I saw him. My dog. The man in the purple suit was standing there patting him on his head, staring straight at me while doing it. There was also another dog standing next to mine. The last thing I heard the man say before my TV turned to static was,
And for today only, we have the great deal of buy one, get one 50% off.
"Am I beautiful?" She asked me that question when I first ran into her. It was all she really did ask me. I smile now, looking back at it. It was not too long ago, actually. We met downtown late at night after I finished eating at the local restaurant. Didn't even notice her at first. I jumped a bit when she walked up to me and asked that question. "Am I beautiful?" Can't be too cautious this late at night. The answer was obvious, even though half of her face was covered by the masks we wore daily now. A blind person can confidently say yes. Her eyes twinkled, her skin clear and practically glowing under the moonlight. Even her voice and scent was heavenly. I was smiling then, just from looking at her alone. And I'm smiling now. Despite almost crapping myself, I can tell she didn't want to rob me or anything like that. You know how you can sense when someone is smiling while talking over the phone? Well, I can hear it in her voice. She was just asking a genuine question. I had to say yes. Why would I lie? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't bring myself to say no. I think she needed the reassurance. But I don't think it was enough for her. Can't blame her. Why don't you try telling someone you're attractive when you're only seeing half of them? It was fair she had to take off her mask and ask me the question. "Am I beautiful?" And her smile was something else. She was beaming. A smile so big, it's the textbook example of grinning from ear to ear. Literally. The corners of her mouth were cut into slits, reaching far around her face. It contrasted the rest of her face. The rest of her. Whereas all of her is enchanting to look at, you almost couldn't take your eyes off her. You most certainly cannot take your eyes off the bottom half of her face. Her lips were missing. A huge scar across her chin and a mutilated mess all around. And now, I have to answer the question. Am I beautiful? I'm smiling now. I gave her the assurance she needed. She grinned. And boy, was that surreal. Seeing her move her jaw to form a grin had me tangled in the stomach, let alone the feeling from seeing her form words and speech. She pulled out a knife from her sleeve. She was grateful for my honesty, and she wants to do something nice for me in return. She told me, "I will make you beautiful too." I'm smiling now. He coughs into a rag, bright red. He refused treatment. Instead, he waits at the door for that bastard to show up. Last week, he asked me to sit with him from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. every night. Grandpa has never been all there, but I chalked it up to the ramblings of the bygone era and state of mind. I did it to fulfill a dying man's wish. Dida, I say in his native tongue. Nobody's coming. You don't have to wait, and I'll have to go back to school soon. Who will wait with you then? His eyes shot into place, connecting with my own. The marbled green irises projected a gaze that suggested a very sharp set of machinery behind them. I felt bad. But wasn't it best that he spends his last days surrounded by family and friends instead of this?
Son, in life you have a choice. Either things happen to you or you happen to things. You can lay down and die like they tell you, or you can fight that bastard when he comes for you. I know what I want. Just wait and be ready to hit the button when I tell you.
We waited. 12 a.m. Quiet. His gaze unwaveringly violent as ever. Firmly pointed at the door. 12:13 a.m. The warm May air cools and drops heavily. I look at Grandpa's eyes. He's bracing. Everything is still. The area devoid of sound, of light, of all life but us. The animals stand still, responding to their deepest instincts. The heavy old metal door glides open. Pitch blackness seeps in, slowly enveloping everything it touches.
Now, son.
I'm so mesmerized by the sight that I almost don't hear him. I hit the button. Floodlight sparks to life, firing at the core of the darkness, peeling it back to reveal a man. Unremarkable, yet familiar. His black clothing is the only hint that things are not as they should be.
This hostility is unnecessary, Philip. I'm doing my job,
the man said. He spoke gently, like a cloud of words.
The hell you are. You and I both know it's not time. That's not for me to decide. Bullcrap. We both remember the war. Deals were made. Is there a deal you wish to make? My life for the boys.
A wave of electric energy coursed through me, sending my nerves into a frenzy. I felt confused, angry, sad, nervous. Why was he doing this?
Very well then, Philip.
The man looked at me, and my mind flicked off like a switch. I came to the next day in a hospital bed. They tell me Grandpa's lungs finally gave out, and the shock made me faint. As they checked me out to make sure I was okay, they found a blood clot that was traveling to my lungs. They caught it just in time. Dida left a note addressed to me. On it was a single word:
fight.
I looked down at my phone and saw the notification from my smart camera app. Notification: movement detected in living room. I swiped it off and went back to work. I worked medical coding on the late night shift, and the cameras has been a pain in the ass since I installed them. My wife and I put them in to keep an eye on our youngest, who likes to sleepwalk, and our oldest, who likes to sleep out after curfew. In reality, however, it's been recording the antics of our two cats after everyone goes to bed. I spent all of last week checking the cameras every time something popped up. Now I've become kind of numb to it. I remember the first night I started getting warnings about it. My phone had buzzed, and I had immediately opened it to check the camera feed. When I say that my youngest sleepwalks, what I mean is that he plays hide and seek in his sleep. My wife and I have woken up in the morning to find his bed empty. Sometimes he's in the living room on the couch. Sometimes he's in the storage shed by the pool. 2 weeks ago, he was in the front yard, asleep in his playset. The officer who found him was not amused since we had called them after tearing up the house and being unable to find him. That was when my wife ordered the cameras. We gotten 3. One for the living room, one for his bedroom, and one for our bedroom, where he sometimes sleeps. They are pretty neat. They are connected to an app, and you can see everything in a 180-degree angle in front of them. When something moved past a specific time, you get a notification to let you know to check the app. It all seemed kind of Orwellian, having cameras throughout the house, but I tried to ignore them as I went about my day. My wife checked them habitually, even when we weren't asleep, and she had discovered that you could talk through them if you weren't home, something that annoyed me to no end. I looked down at the phone and silenced the notification again. At night, I checked the notifications to make sure my youngest wasn't sleepwalking. Last week, I checked the notifications religiously. I wanted to see where he was going, so I could call my wife and warn her that he was out of bed. I kind of wanted to catch my oldest sneaking out too, just so I could scare him by yelling through the speakers. 2 new notifications. I looked down and silenced them again, not close together. It was always the cats playing in the living room. The first night, I got 10 notifications within about 3 hours. I checked everyone, checking to see what had set the camera off. The first notification proved to be nothing. The camera moved to the movement's position, but no one was there. The second, one of the cats had jumped onto the couch. By the third, I was sure that this would be the one where something happened. I pulled it up and nearly gave my coworker a heart attack. There was a face staring right at the camera, staring back at me through the lens. I dropped the phone and jumped back a little, nearly upsetting my chair. When I went to look at it again though, I had to laugh as I realized my mistake. The face belonged to Oscar, one of our cats, and he was sniffing at the lens curiously. When I started to laugh, I think my coworker's blood pressure probably normalized again. By the second night, I think I was already beginning to understand how this would be. The second night had 7 notifications, all cat-related. Oscar jumping from the chair to the couch, Chester, our other cat, getting a drink, the 2 of them playing in the wee hours of the morning. There was a rather funny bit where Chester fell asleep and rolled off the back of the couch. But it was becoming a little annoying even by that point. Notification. Movement detected in master bedroom. Movement detected in son's room. I looked at the notification, finger floating over the button that would show me what was going on, but I ignored it instead. My son had likely left his room and gone to my bedroom. He did that sometimes, and it would have certainly set the camera off. I went back to work, trying to put it out of my mind.
The next 2 nights last week had been the most infuriating. The cats had zoomed around the living room, fighting and playing. The camera pinged my phone every few minutes, roving from side to side as it tried to follow their antics. That was the first night that I ignored the notifications. It was just the cats after all, and I had work to do. Notification. Movement detected in living room. I had barely even reached to silence the phone when another came over. Notification. Movement detected in living room. 3 times. I made a disgusted sound and silenced my phone. I had work to do, and I didn't have time to watch cats play. I heard the phone vibrating for the next hour, telling me about how there was motion detected in the living room, motion detected in bedrooms, and then back in the living room again. Clearly, my son had left the bedroom doors open, and the cats have extended their play to the bedrooms. They were probably driving my wife nuts, but if she had enough of it, I guess she would get up and close the doors. I was quickly getting tired of this. The constant reminders were driving me crazy, and I was falling behind on my coding. It had to be the cats again. This was getting out of hand. I couldn't spend every night like this. Maybe if I yelled at them through the speaker, they would move off or settle down. It probably wouldn't amount to anything, but if nothing else, it would give me a laugh. I brought up the camera menu and found a display that was connected to the living room. The hourglass spun as it loaded, and finally, I could see my living room in the soupy translucence of the night vision camera. In the dim glow, I saw the source of the movement. Their hand fiddling with the knob cover that we keep on to hinder my youngest was near the door was someone in a dark hoodie. Their back to the camera. I felt a flash of anger. So it hadn't been the cats after all. My teenage son was attempting to leave in the middle of the night to do God knew what. I couldn't believe it. How many times had we had this discussion? How many times had we told him that curfews were for a reason? And now he was bothering me at work because he wanted to go smoke with his asshole friends. Well, I'd put a scare in him.
Get your ass back to bed, and don't you dare let me catch you up again.
I shouted as loud as I could. When the figure didn't immediately act terrified and have a minor heart attack, I knew something was wrong. My son fancies himself a bit of badass, but he'd easily startled when it comes to loud noises. The figure didn't act surprised in the least bit. They just stood by the door, still as a statue, and I could almost believe that the camera had frozen. I stared at them through the camera for what felt like hours before they turned and began to walk towards the fireplace where I had set up the housing for the device. They were wearing a mask, something like a rubber animal mask that was difficult to see with the hood pulled up. As they got closer, walking slowly as they tried to get a better look at the camera, I could see the long snout of a pig as it looked from the wide black mouth of the hoodie. He came right up to the camera, the eye holes blocking some of his ability to see, I suppose, and just stared into the little glass eye. He was still, long enough for me to think I had lost signal again. And when he swung whatever was in his hand at the camera, I jumped back in surprise. The feed went dead, and I was on my phone to the police before the notification dinged across. Notification: living room camera disabled. I'm in a little room now, one that they usually assign for people under interrogation. I don't honestly know what to do. The police have gone to my house, but I already know what they're going to find. I reviewed the alerts I received, the screen grabs telling a tale that makes my blood run cold. If I had taken them seriously, everything could have gone very differently. If I had just checked the cameras, I could have warned them. The intruder came in about 11:30, just as the first notification came through. I watched him walk through the living room, Chester walking up to the couch to sniff at him curiously as he looked around. Chester was always a little too curious for his own good, and it was his downfall then. The second notification had been the intruder as he stopped and looked at Chester, turning his head weirdly, like a robot trying to loosen a stuck hinge. The third bing had been to let me know that the intruder had brained him with a crowbar before heading to the back of the house. The next two bings had been Oscar going to inspect the body of his dead friend. The man had proceeded to the bedroom I share with my wife then. At first, he just stood there, watching her sleep, cocking his head in that odd way that I was beginning to think of it as a tic. This was when my youngest, probably after hearing some noise, left his room and headed to our bedroom. The next notification was a 20-second shot of the man standing over my wife. He had triggered the camera when he swung the crowbar down onto her face, bludgeoning her death with a dozen sharp strikes. I could see, even in the dim light, how the pillow she slips with over her head turned red as he turned her skull into pulp. I could also see, in the corner of the room, my son standing in the doorway, watching all this go down. My heart leaped when I saw him. Was I about to watch him die as well? I couldn't imagine how scared he must be. He was 4 years old, watching his mother being brutally murdered by a man in a pig mask, who had seemingly stepped out of a nightmare. I expected him to cry out, to scream in terror. For some reason though, all he did was move as quietly as he could into the living room. That had been the notification after that. The very next one had been the intruder sticking his head into my son's room, tilting his head as he looked for him. Then he had triggered the camera again when he moved into the living room too. That was the second most nerve-wracking time. I could clearly see my son crouching behind the couch, knees to his chest, as tears ran down his face. I was crying by then, myself. He must have been so scared. As the intruder came into the living room, I knew that this would be when I watched him die too. The intruder should have been able to see the top of his head. The intruder should have been able to clearly see him crouched there, or hear his quiet sobbing. Oscar's body could still be seen across the back of the couch, but the other was nowhere to be seen. It was just the intruder and my son, alone. When he stopped behind the couch, looking around as the crowbar dripped messily, I held my breath. But then, he turned and left instead. The next notification had been to show me the intruder leaving to return to the back of the house. The one after that, the most heartbreaking, was my 4-year-old son dragging himself by sheer will to the cabinet under the sink and closing himself in. 2 of the next 3 reminders had been Oscar, probably running to hide too as he zoomed towards the laundry room. If my son was making noise under the sink, I didn't hear it on the camera. If the man had killed my oldest son, I wouldn't know until the cops told me. The next notification happened when I was aware of the intruder, when I had screamed at him to get his ass back to bed. The last notification was when he had destroyed the camera. I say last because when I started writing this down, hoping that writing it down would help me keep it clear in my head, it was the last notification. I got another notification about 30 seconds ago. A notification that I don't know what to do with. The cops had been there, of course. They called and told me that they searched the house and found my wife and my oldest son dead in their beds. Of my youngest, there was no sign, but they didn't find the intruder either. They believed this meant he had left. The front door had been open, and they believed they may have taken my son. They were going to start a search immediately, but I don't know what good it will do.
We'll leave a few cops outside to watch the residence, but we want to get people on this as soon as possible.
I got a notification from the camera in my bedroom just after hanging up the phone. Notification: movement detected in master bedroom. I pulled it up and couldn't breathe for a few seconds. He was holding a sign in one hand and the limp body of my youngest in the other. The dark eyes of his pig mask stared across the miles and saw me as I sit here in this uncomfortable plastic chair. My son didn't look harmed, but he wasn't moving, and he is always moving. I had already lost so much already, and I was truly afraid of losing him too. The sign read,
Tell the cops to leave if you ever want to see your son alive again. Monica, open the goddamn door.
He pounds again. The doorknob rattles, and the screws in the hinges creak against the wood. I tell myself he can't get in. It may be his house, but it's my bathroom, my little oasis. I have the key. It's locked out, but...
Monica, you fucking bitch.
But I still flinch every time he unleashes his fury on the door. His flat, wooden proxy. I know what he'd do to me if he got in. Last time he was this angry, it was a broken tooth and 2 cracked ribs. I still shift as I sit from the bruises on my hips and back. I lean on my right arm. My left one clicks at the elbow. The price of a moment of independent expression.
Monica, baby, open the door. I know you can hear me. Monica, please.
He stops yelling. An eye of the storm. I used to fall for it. He'd say sweet things. Say he was sorry. How much he loved me. I'd open the door, and he'd paint me a picture of that love in blues and purples across my face. Not this time. No.
Fucking cunt. Open the door.
He punctuates his words with shoulder checks. I sink into a sea of curtains on the floor. Part of the reason for his rage. The curtains weren't working for me anymore. I did some redecorating in his house. The house that I just happened to live in. My bathroom, the guest bathroom to be exact, is the only room in the house that doesn't need curtains. It's a closet with a chipping clawfoot top, but it has personality. A little clamp print and a knobbly bath mat.
Monica!
I looked at my watch. 5:53 a.m. So late that it's early. But he won't sleep. Not with me in the bathroom, and his anger unbeaten. I light a candle with shaky hand. Bluebells. Pretty. I close my eyes and clutch the key to my chest as he batters the door. Not this time.
Monica, so help me, if you don't open the door, I will flay the skin from your body inch by inch and then wring you out into the fucking tub.
He's so fixated on his easy vengeance that he's not paying attention to the time. Huh. A mistake for a vampire. I'm not giving him back the curtains. The windows are staying bare. He can slam the door all he wants. It's not even locked. When he convinced me to move in, he said that the guest bathroom was all mine. That was enough. He's lost his invitation.
Monica, please open the door. I'll change.
Desperation. 6:01 in the morning. He's seen the sky outside begin to lighten. He left the door for a moment to go for his coffin. But, like I said, I have the key. He's locked out.
Baby, I swear I'll change.
He won't. He said that before. But he had 2 centuries to change. And old habits die hard.